Okay, so this is day 64 of going through my journals, and I have actually lost the sheet that I printed out a while back with this prompt on it, so I'm just going to read it for you. The quote says, "Don't limit your challenges, challenge your limits." So don't limit your challenges, challenge your limits. And then it says, "In what ways do you want to challenge yourself, and which challenge scares you the most?" So think about how you want to challenge yourself. And if you want to pause the video and think about that for a few minutes, do that now. And I'm just going to go into reading what I wrote. And actually, I think I like doing the videos this way. I'm gonna change it up for the next video, I think, because it'll make editing and stuff a little bit easier. But okay, so in what ways do you want to challenge yourself, and which challenge scares you the most? I said, okay, it's already starting out to be the same thing that I always write. As of right now, my biggest direct challenges are with work and school, but I'm also struggling with relationships. Again, I feel like I've written this a million times in here. I've always struggled a bit with relationships, more so friendships, but also romantic. Actually, I guess I've struggled with both, but in different ways. So I know I've mentioned that I feel like I have ADHD that's been undiagnosed, just because I feel like all of the ADHD stuff that I'm reading, I feel like that's me, but just without the outward hyperactivity. I feel like a lot of these things that I've always, like for years since I was little, I've always like known about myself that was just like problems with me. Like I was like, why am I always like running late to places? I was able to function well enough to where I would get most places on time, on the dot, but I was always running late, always leaving at the last minute, always stressed. And I always hated that I did that, but I didn't know why I always did that. And like, I mean, that was the first one that comes to the top of my head, but there's like several, like multiple things that I read about people with ADHD, and I'm like, oh my gosh, like, this is my life. Like, this is why I've had such a hard time with some of these things. But I had come up with like ways on my own to just kind of counteract them. But like I said, with school last year, it just got to a point to where it was just too overwhelming, and all of like the tools that I was using unknowingly, they just weren't working anymore. But even though I'm not on medication or anything right now, I feel like just understanding that there is something like different about my brain, and like reading more information about how an ADHD brain works, and like what methods and habits specific to like ADHD you can use, like I feel like it's made a huge difference for me. And nicotine gum. Like, I know that's like, I don't want to like persuade people to use nicotine gum, because I'd mentioned it in like an ADHD group, because apparently there's a shortage of Adderall or something, and people were like asking like, what is something I can do? And I was just like, well, I don't know if this is true for everyone, but there's been some studies that have shown that nicotine and caffeine and things like that work. And I think I've been self-medicating my whole life with caffeine. I am getting so off topic right now, because I wasn't actually going to talk about ADHD. But I've been seeing a lot of people talk about autism, and it's kind of similar. Like, I don't want to label myself as ADHD or autistic, just because I don't want to label myself as anything. But the more I'm learning, because I had this perception of like what someone with ADHD acted like, and I also had a perception of what someone who was autistic acted like. And now that I'm seeing, and there's all this debate onto, are people just being more liberal with their diagnosis, things like that. But you know, I guess I didn't realize how much autism was like a social disorder. Um, but I am feeling like I relate to, like, obviously I don't have a lot of the, like, what do you call it? Where you touch things and have sensitivities to, like, textures and things like that. But, you know, I'm wondering if some of the other things, like I said, I struggle to, like, maintain relationships with people or build but I think I do, like, maybe not, because I guess a part of it is not understanding social cues, and I think for the most part I do. I don't know, actually, like, maybe I don't, but I feel like for the most part I understand social cues. And you know, my roommate, he knows that I'm kind of like self-conscious about being shy and about being social, and he's told me this multiple times. He's like, I know that you feel like anxious talking to people, and I know that you feel like, you know, you're not very good socially. And he's like, but I will tell you if you're awkward. He's like, I know you tell me you feel awkward, but I've never sensed any awkwardness when I've seen you in social situations. He's like, the way you talk about it versus the way you act, like, they don't mesh together. Like, you don't come off as awkward when I've seen you in social situations. So that makes me feel a little bit better. So, like, even though I feel really awkward, apparently most people don't perceive me as awkward. And I also had that happen with my boss, because, and maybe it's like masking, like, I don't know, because when I was little, 100%, so many people told me, like, labeled me as shy. Not necessarily awkward, socially awkward, but just like shy. I was quiet. Um, and so people did sense there was something socially different about me because I was shy. But whenever I said that to my boss a couple years ago, she seemed like shocked by it. Like, that, you know, I said, well, I'm kind of shy. And she's like, what, really? Like, you're shy? And so, I don't know. Like, I feel like I can relate to some of the stuff I've been seeing that people talk about with autism in terms of, like, building social relationships and stuff. But I don't think, if it is, it's not that extreme. But if anything, I do feel like I connect a lot with the people that talk about ADHD. But anyway, I'm talking about I'm struggling with relationships, but it's like weird because I say that I'm struggling with it, but it doesn't bother me. It's not like I want to build all these relationships. But for relationships that I'm, like, forced to have, I sometimes feel like anxious about it, I guess. Sometimes. And anyway, I said, let's see, I'm currently struggling with my relationship with the person I was seeing. I said at this point, any chance of something long-term is gone, but right now feels like a bit of a limbo. Fortunately, I think I'm getting to a point where I don't care for him romantically at all, which is good, because when he does things, see, again, I wish I had the date. When he does things like he did last night, I don't feel as hurt, but at the same time, I'm like, what are we even doing? So I'm assuming he probably went and hooked up with some girl based on that. I think because that was, like, the main issue in our relationship was him cheating and lying about it. And then it got to a point where I was trying to be okay with it, but just, like, said, I don't want to be lied to, because I can sense, like, when I'm being lied to, and being able to sense that, but then having them continue to lie and make you feel like you're crazy, like, it does drive you crazy, because you know something, but then someone's lying to you, and especially if it's someone that you care about that's lying to you. Like, it was more like the lying The cheating bothered me, of course, but the lying almost bothered me more. And he just kept doing it, and or just doing it and like not, it got to a point to where I was trying to be okay with it, but then he would just, I don't know, it was weird. It was like sometimes I would feel like I've got this under control, I can have a relationship with this person and let him go be with other people and just not care about it because we've got all these other things that are great. And it's like sometimes I would feel like that was fine, but then a week or two later, I would just, you know, feel hurt and everything. And I think, again, I think it has to do with my hormone cycle. I think there's some times of the month that I can be more okay with it, and then other times that I can't. And I had even tried to tell him that. I'm like, I know I sound crazy because I keep going back and forth between like saying that I'm okay with this and then being really hurt by it. And so I was like trying to get like a compromise point of like, you can do this when I say it's okay, but then it just gets really, really complicated. And, you know, deep down, all I wanted was, you know, monogamy. And I was trying to compromise in a way that just kept hurting me. And so anyway, I think that's what's going on there. So I go on to say, I think I'm really just scared to be alone. I think if I tried dating, it wouldn't be difficult to find someone, but I think I may be even more afraid of dating or making friends than being alone. So I guess what I'm saying here is like, I could date, I could probably find someone, but dating is risky. You know, making friends to me feels risky, because you don't really know what type of people they're going to turn out to be. And maybe that is, you know, something with me not being able to read people. I think I've been too trusting of people in the past that have had red flags of being like bad people. And I just feel like I don't catch it until it's too late. So I think that's why I hesitate to like build friendships, or relationships. And so I'm basically like, I would rather just be alone than have to deal with all of that stress. I said maybe my challenge should be to stand up for myself, to set boundaries and not worry about being alone, and to get out of my comfort zone and meet people, even if it's just as friends. I keep telling myself I don't have time, but maybe it's just because I don't make time for anyone but this other person that I was spending a lot of time with. So yeah, I don't know. I think I didn't really go in the direction that the prompt was for, because it was talking about how do you want to challenge yourself, and like my response, and I think I was like deep in, because I said, you know, what he did last night. So I think like that was like on my mind. If I had to answer this again about like, how do I want to challenge myself and what challenge scares me? It would be, you know, getting through this fitness program, you know, making it through the 12 weeks. I'm going to challenge myself to do every day, like to try not to skip any days and really get through and make it in the top 10, and, you know, just see how that goes. And what challenge scares me the most is kind of like, I think like, what am I going to do when I finish school is kind of something that I just put it off, like thinking about it, because I just tend to like think of like what's right in front of me for the most part. Like I'm forward thinking, but like not too far forward thinking, which is weird, I think. But like I have all these big things that I want to do, and I feel like I'm to the point where I have the capability to do a lot of these things, like start my own business, or get into a career that's going to be like my career. But I think that scares me. And I think the ADHD thing has a part to play in it, because there's been so many things that I felt so passionate about for a short amount of time and then lose interest. And so I think I'm scared that if I choose something to jump into to be my career, that I'm going to do this, that I will invest all this time and energy into it and then just start to feel so much anxiety and stress if I feel trapped in it. And I think that's what really scares me, because that's happened to me before, where I've committed to things in a point where I felt really motivated and passionate about it, and then it just ends up like just being stress and anxiety for me. So I don't know. I think the challenge is like either finding something that I feel like I can stick to, or getting the confidence to be like, okay, I'm gonna start businesses. And then ideally I would like to start like all these million businesses, or implement all these ideas that I have for different things. They're not all necessarily business ideas, but, and this is where I think the social part holds me back, because I would love to be able to like get these things going and then find like somebody to manage it for me, to where I don't have to like be the one that's constantly taking care of things, so I can jump on to the next thing that I'm interested in. But it would be about me trusting people to actually manage it well. And, or maybe I just don't need to care, because it seems like that's how a lot of the like entrepreneurs, like the ones that they talk about in Silicon Valley, it's like they'll start this one thing and then they'll kind of leave that company and like jump to the next and the next and the next, and they just kind of leave whatever else behind. But I don't think I don't want to be like one of those kinds of entrepreneurs. But I don't know. One day at a time. I'm not going to worry about that right now. So yeah, weird answer for that. But you know, in what ways do you want to challenge yourself, and which challenge scares you the most? I'm sure everybody's probably got a different answer for that. So if you do, and if you're watching this, one of the 10 people that's been watching these, yeah, if you feel comfortable, like leave what your challenge is in the comments, because I am interested. Like I am interested in hearing what other people respond on these questions, because I don't know if mine, I mean, I wouldn't compare them, but I feel like mine are a little bit different, and I just would like to know if other people feel the same way as me, or are completely different. Either way, it wouldn't bother me, but I'm just curious. I'm just curious about everything. So just out of curiosity, I'd be curious to know like what thoughts other people have on all these. But anyway, I will be back tomorrow with day 65.